This is the 2024 Lexus UX 300h, replacing the 250h, which was one of their best-selling models here in Europe. So, is it any different? Is it any better? And should you buy this over its European competitors? I'm AJ, you're watching Autogefühl, and let's dive right in. The first thing you'll notice is that the exterior design really hasn't changed. This sonic copper color is new for this model year, and I was speaking to the product designer who had come all the way from Tokyo yesterday at the press conference, and he said they had to make the logo a little bit bigger now because one of the updates that this version gets is new driver assistance systems. So in general, the same bumper. This is a very polarizing design with the nice spindle honeycomb structure in the middle, really gaping almost like a gate to an estate. What do you guys think? I personally don't mind. I like that cars like this exist, giving people choices to really go crazy with their design. You have the Lexus signature. It almost looks like the L over here, similar to the logo. And then LED headlamps. You get different versions. We are testing a much more base model here today, and we'll talk more about the versions later on. The side profile as well. So many cuts and creases. It really is very anime, very ninja, very samurai. Even the shape of the wheel arches are so funky. These 18-inch wheels fill up the wheel arches pretty well. On camera, I know that in general it does look a little bit under-tired, as in the size of the wheels are a bit small. But in the flesh, trust me, it looks pretty proportional. I do like the Lexus wing mirrors. Really sleek, and right now they have also changed the colors to just be a glossy a glossy black design. Further along, you have strong shoulder line, a rising belt line, more creases here. And in this kind of a lighting, you really see that play of light here and shadow here. Really makes it very edgy. Contrast roof colors, depending on the option that you get. This being the F Sport design, so you get that contrast color. If you don't like this sonic copper color, here's an example of the more classic blue and the black. The urban crossover, the UX, is 4.5 meters or about 177 inches long. We'll take a look at how that translates to interior packaging once we're inside. But this is one of my favorite parts of the car. I love the three-dimensional fin for the rear lights. Sure, it hasn't changed, but you know, on a sunny day like this, when I'm enjoying the nature, I can put my water or my coffee right here. They've thought of everything, haven't they? Horizontal tail lamp, the new 300h badging, and if we look down at the bumper, it's very neat, simple, no fake exhaust tips. So thumbs up for that. We've established that not much has changed on the outside, but when you look under the hood, this is where the fun begins. The unique proposition of the Lexus UX as compared to, say, the BMW X1 or the GLA or even the Volvo XC30 is that this is a self-charging hybrid, whereas all those other ones are available as a plug-in hybrid. No, you still don't get a plug-in hybrid here, but this is the 5th gen strong hybrid from Lexus, which means that the battery is now a lithium-ion battery and not a nickel metal hydride. It's still pretty small, about 1 kilowatt hour, but the combined system output of this has increased by about 15 horsepower to 199 PS, which means faster acceleration, but also better efficiency. You get this as a front-wheel drive with the eCVT, but you also get the E4, which is what they call for the all-wheel drive version. And as you can imagine, that's just with an electric motor on the rear axle. There is no drive from this petrol hybrid engine to the rear. But I think the front-wheel drive version is the one to get, and we'll speak more about that once we're on the road. Let's take a look inside the trunk. I have the Autogefühl Ruler of Truth, and oh boy, not off to a great start. This is my cabin suitcase. As you can see, it could probably fit just another one here, so not a lot of space, a pretty high and narrow loading area. In fact, the overall volume is only about 433 liters. And then there's this partial shelf, which is for a Lexus. I think it should have been a little bit better quality. You can lower the floor down to liberate some more volume here. Below this, there are some additional cubby areas along with the emergency kit. In fact, there's some more cubbies over here as well if you wanted to keep, for example, your first aid kit, or not much more. I don't think you can fit a water bottle there either. And on the other side as well, there is a deeper cubby here, maybe to keep some sunglasses or caps or sports equipments maybe. But in general, not very wide or long. Here we go. Let's see. It's just about 74 centimeters in this length. That's about 28 and a half, roughly 29 inches. And if you really were to consider the height up to the parcel shelf, that's just about 45 centimeters or about 18 inches. So you cannot store much on its own in the trunk. You need to put the seats down. And thankfully, they split in a 40-60 fashion, although you don't have switches at the back. And with the floor at the higher level, you do get a flat loading area. Here is the key fob. Nice, heavyweight. Kind of looks like a lighter, so you can show off. Oh yeah, I drive a Lexus. The door has a nice heavy feel to it. In fact, one of the things they've improved for this model year is the sound deadening. Better acoustic glass, and even things like this beading down here. They've paid a lot of attention to isolate the road and the rain noise from the cabin. This is the F Sport design, so not the full F Sport version, and that means you get a very monochromatic interior. You have other choices, and I personally would pick something with lighter colors. The material here is nice and soft, but this is a little bit harder, not terrible though. Cushioned, padded armrest, and some storage. Looking inside, yeah, very monochromatic once again, but you do have different options. In fact, you also get a full leather-free interior. There's also fabric seats, and you get the animal leather seats as an option. Let me get inside. Is it as cramped as it was in the trunk? Well, actually, here in the front, it's not too bad. Getting inside is a little bit better than a standard hatchback, but this is again a crossover, and even Lexus calls this a luxurious hatchback. So it's the nice hip to heel ratio means that it's more car-like to drive. The steering wheel is a bit traditional, a little bit old-fashioned, dare I say, but the padding is nice. It looks a lot thicker in the pictures, but when you hold it, it's not that fat. The talking points for the interior, however, are the new digital instruments and the new infotainment system. I have a lot more cool stuff to tell you about on the inside. First of all, they've even put more sound deadening here in the dashboard, and the materials are also nice. I just wish they were a little bit lighter in color. The glove box also has a pretty cool shelf. Now this probably caught your eye, and finally the UX has a much more modern touchscreen infotainment. This is the optional 12.3-inch touchscreen. There's also an 8-inch base version. You get a physical knob for the volume. The inbuilt navigation doesn't really have all the streets updated yet, so you can just mirror with wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. However, the navigation doesn't show up on the instruments. We'll talk about that in a minute. Air conditioning vents and physical buttons here for the air conditioning climatization. 2 zones in this version here. Really nice. An inductive charger without cooling, USB-C ports, cup holders with adapters, and in the previous version you had a big trackpad and another controller here, and I wish they could have utilized this space now for more storage. Like, it sounds a bit hollow. There's just these giant buttons for my seat and steering wheel heating, and I wish that there was more storage. It seems like a bit of a missed opportunity. Shift-by-wire here. Center armrest with more charging options. And being a Lexus, of course, you have your drive mode selector right here. And to be honest, it takes only about 5 minutes to get used to it. And I personally find myself changing in my car the driving mode very, very rarely. So I don't think this is an issue. It's easy to see which mode you're in. You don't have to look down to press the button. I actually like it. I know it's a bit of a controversial topic. What do you guys think? Similarly, on the other side, you have the traction control, which you also never really touch. The optional 12.3-inch digital instruments is really easy to read. You can also choose different views, including one with the inbuilt navigation, right? You can't use Apple CarPlay and navigation on that. Of course, there are new advancements for this model year for driver assistance systems, including a driver monitoring system, which contains an array of cameras right here, watching you the whole time. How do you feel about that? Okay, so the moment of truth. This is not a very large opening. The door also doesn't open beyond this angle. It's not 90 degrees. So putting in child seats in the back not the best. Getting inside also not the best. There are ISOFIX points for the outside two seats, but this is the open flap kind of ISOFIX point, which means you're going to lose these caps. So not looking that great so far. Also, there is only one backseat pouch here, which of course for the driver's side, it's easy for the driver to reach down, put their hand in, but there isn't one on this side either. But I'm actually pleasantly surprised with the amount of space back here. It's not great, but I thought it was going to be much worse. This seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'8", or about 1.7 meters roundabout. And yeah, I have decent knee room. I can also slide my feet under the front seats. If I put my head up, I have, a good amount of headroom. Black interior, not that large windows, makes it feel really hemmed in, makes it feel really claustrophobic. I have air conditioning vents and USB charging ports down here, but this being the hybrid, the good thing is that the battery is actually below the rear bench, which means there isn't a large battery pack under here, and therefore the floor isn't raised. So I'm not sitting in a knees up position. So all things considered, the seat contour, the seat comfort, and the space is not as bad. It's just I feel like they could have executed some of these storage spaces a little bit better. So what's the UX like to drive? Let's start with the suspension. So we're out on some country roads here near Bordeaux in France, and it's a little bit on the firm side, but the plus point of that is that it's really composed around corners. In fact, they've also worked on the brake distribution between the front and the rear, but also side to side to counteract some of the body roll. And when you're turning in really steep and you're braking through the corner, this really helps stabilize the car. And I've seen that work fairly well in moderate driving conditions. The sound insulation also has really helped refine the interior experience of this car. It is raining now, so you can hear the patter of the raindrops, but that being said, road noise, even the water hitting the wheel arches, they've paid attention to try to minimize this sound, and it does help, for sure. This new hybrid system is also more powerful than before, which means that it's able to accelerate from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in about 8.1 seconds with the front-wheel drive version, as compared to, I think, about 8.5. So a little bit of an increment, not night and day, more like 6 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. But even the rear-wheel drive version is not too far off. It also takes about 7.9 seconds for 0 to 100. And I think that's something we can talk about. Do you really need the all-wheel drive? It's a lot more expensive. If you live in the snowy mountains of Switzerland or something like that, it definitely helps, I know. But this is more of an urban crossover. That's their positioning. And I think with the electric hybrid system for the front-wheel drive, it's able to deploy that torque in a much more controlled manner. Let's test the acceleration a little bit from 80 kilometers an hour. There's 100. The eCVT does drone, but to be honest, I think CVTs are quite fantastic. The droning sound people tend to associate with the rubber band effect is looked down upon, but this eCVT tries to suppress that sound quite a bit, also with the extra sound deadening in the bulkhead here. And in general, it ensures that the engine is in its most efficient power band, and at the same time, there is no loss of power. So the eCVT works really well. Acceleration is okay. The electric hybrid system also assists even up to speeds of 115 kilometers an hour, especially when you're going downhill, for example. It can run purely with the electric motor. So this combination and 199 horsepower, I think, is adequate for everyday use. This is not a sports car. It's not a hot hatch. So you shouldn't expect that it behaves like that. All right, let's talk a little bit about the assistance systems. So I'm going to turn on the cruise control now. I'm going at about 100, and I press the adaptive cruise control button on. And now the car is monitoring the distance with the car in front and also keeping me centered in the lane. This works pretty well, as with most systems that we see, but there's some pretty cool features here as well. It's also pretty good at recognizing if there's, for example, a cone on the side of the road, and it will try to divert you within your lane around that cone, for example. So especially useful on country roads. It's also pretty good at detecting motorcycles and pedestrians and cyclists and cars coming into your lane. So it's not a very binary kind of, I'm looking at my lane, I'm slowing it down just within this. It's a little bit more aware of its surroundings. In fact, even in the rear seats, when you open the door, it's looking to see if there's traffic coming from behind you, and it will give you an audible warning, so when you swing out your door, you don't accidentally hit a cyclist or another car. The lane centering also works very confidently, although it does require you to have a firm grip on the steering wheel and still interact with the steering. What I don't like so much, for example, is the traffic sign adapting the cruise control. So now we went from 100 to a 90. This system recognizes that, and it's giving me the audible warning that I'm going faster, but there is no one button for me to change the speed. I have to hold down and click, click, click to change it to the speed manually, and I wish that this was a bit more automated. So now again, it's from 90 to a 70. I have to hold and press it down to 70. So I wish that that little detail was improved. But overall, there's also a driver alert or a driver awareness monitoring system. So if you're dozing off, it'll detect that. It'll give you an audible warning to try to wake you up. But if it realizes that you're not paying attention, then it can also put you to the side of the road and stop for you automatically. And now, if you know, there's a new European mandate that this traffic sign recognition should also give the driver an audible warning when they are going over the speed limit. And this is not very intrusive here in the UX. It's a very subtle bing and a bong here and there. But I think overall the system in general, in conjunction with the government, has to be a little bit improved. Oftentimes I see that there's contradictory inputs. The road sign might say a different speed because there's a construction going on, but the GPS, that's where the database is for the speed is stored, has a different speed that's not been updated, and the system doesn't really know what to do, and it confuses me as a driver. And then the binging and the bonging can be a bit annoying, but at least you can turn that down a bit, and it's not as bad as some of the other cars. We haven't been driving for too long today, and I've been resetting the trip meter now for the highway. So far, it's not that great. It's about 6.7 liters for 100 kilometers, but when you drive for longer distances and the system gets to use the electric mode often as well, then you will even see numbers. I've seen around 5.3, 5.4, which is, I would say, really good for an electric system. You also have an EV driving ratio, which shows you, okay, I've been spending 50% of the time since reset in electric mode only. Okay, now I'm in sport mode, going around this roundabout. Not bad. In the sport mode, you can definitely hear the engine a bit more, and being an eCVT, you hear it that much louder. But again, I think CVTs in general are a really ingenious mechanical device, and as a mechanically minded engineer, I really appreciate the linear power delivery that a CVT provides, and there's no break in the power. So in the sport mode, the engine is definitely at the forefront, more so than the electric motor, and 199 horsepower is actually a healthy amount. Throttle response also feels sharpened. In eco mode, it's a lot more dulled. The steering also feels heavier. So yeah, but it's a very subtle difference. It's again not night and day. It's 6 p.m., 6:30 p.m. kind of a difference. But body control is actually really nice. The car turns in really well. It's actually enjoyable to drive. The steering has decent feedback. Considering that this is an urban crossover, this is not a hot hatch, this is not something inherently designed to be a sporty car to drive, it definitely handles better than I expected. Mileage, of course, is still a strong suit, so even if you are enjoying throwing it around corners like this, you're still getting around 6 liters for 100 kilometers, even better so on longer drives. Yeah, and sufficient acceleration to keep you engaged. That electric motor means that there's also instant torque, and any gap that the engine has, the motor is filling in those gaps. Here, the rear axle electric motor for the all-wheel drive version might help a little bit, but the improvement is very subtle. So I would recommend that you try them out and see if you really feel a noticeable difference that you think you're going to use on a daily basis. I would say you probably won't. The seats don't have that much side bolstering, of course, this being the full leather-free interior. The seats are pretty good, but on the whole, it's a pretty fun car to drive if you don't push it too much. The base variant starts at around 44,000 euros. This F-Sport design is about 48,000 euros, but the all-wheel drive version is a whopping 63,000 euros. Should you be putting that kind of money down for the UX? Here's a few things to consider. If you want a hybrid but can't charge it, that means you can't get a plug-in hybrid, well, this strong hybrid is probably one of the best you can get. It's also very smart in terms of its driver assistance systems. It also rides and handles really well, really nice sound insulation on the interior. But its biggest downfall, I think, is the interior space. They should have done the packaging a little bit better. The rear seats and then the trunk is just not up there with its competitors. Speaking of which, to help you make this decision, why don't you watch some of the videos of the BMW X1, the GLA, the Volvos, to then decide which is the right car for you.